My name is Shannon Jackson, and as a curator of the Art and Technology Culture Colloquium, and as the director of the Arts Research Center, and as Associate Vice Chancellor for the Arts and Design, it is a privilege for me to get to welcome you on behalf of all of those organizations to tonight's lecture series of Arts and Design Mondays, which are a co-curated and what it takes to sustain the social good. Ooh, that's different. Creativity, technology, what it means to sustain the public good. How about that? Actually, before I go further, I'm going to read a quote to you, just maybe a little game. And I won't attribute this for now. The internet is the most beautiful tool in the world. You can play. Everyone can see your work and hear your voice. I think it's the best way to experiment, unquote. Okay. At least one of the people in our event tonight said this. And so maybe by the end of tonight, you can guess who. Indeed, when my faculty colleagues and I were putting together this series, we did so wanting to hear from people who play and people who care about other artists and makers who play. But we also wanted to think with people who could help us decide or explore just how beautiful this tool was. Throughout our series so far, we have invited cultural critics across a range of forms, critics of television, of journalism, within journalism, critics of television, film, visual art, performance, and also some who think very specifically about the role of digital platforms in the creation of art forms and the effect of technology on those art forms, but also what digital platforms are doing and how they influence the production and reception of art making and of public dialogue around culture at large. So this is all set within a much broader conversation about how digital platforms are changing, say, the nature of public dialogue right now, and what it means also to consider, say, the digital as a kind of medium or material, as a tool, as a place to play, for creation and also for dialogue making. And of course, when we started to plan this series in August, we did not know how much it was going to be reframed by the election and the effects of the election during what some are increasingly calling the Twitter presidency. So what is the effects, once again, of digital platforms on public dialogue? But tonight we're going to think about video and digital material that circulates on YouTube and elsewhere. And as we said, what it means to be critical or part of a cultural critical field in the so-called age of YouTube. And I'm really thrilled that we have such three incredibly compelling voices to help us think about that. Tonight's program, before I continue, I want to offer some thanks because it's very much indebted to a range of faculty who have been interested in exploring these questions, and from departments and centers from across the campus, including the Townsend Center, the Arts Research Center, the Art of Writing Program, Black Room, Digital Humanities, BAMPFA, and of course the Arts and Design Initiative itself. This whole sort of platform, this idea of a regular Monday series, is part of our attempt to create a regular forum where different departments and faculty might contribute ideas for the kind of speakers and topics they most want to explore. So thank you to my faculty co-curators and to our incredible staff from across all those units for making this happen once again. All right, I'm going to get to these great people. So let me have some brief biographies from what are really incredible, long, amazing lives. First off, Tiffany Shlain is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker, founder of the Webby Awards, co-founder of the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences, and runs the Let It Ripple film studio in San Francisco. Her films and work have received over 80 awards and distinctions, including a Disruptive Innovation Award from Tribeca Film Festival. Her UC Berkeley campus-wide commencement speech, I remember it, in 2010, is listed on NPR as one of the best commencement speeches ever. 4 of her films have been premiered at Sundance, including her featured documentary, Connected. The U.S. State Department selected 4 of her films for the American Film Showcase. Tiffany is a Cal alumna who earned her BA in Interdisciplinary Studies and Film Theory, and she won the Eisner Award for Filmmaking, which some of you know, that's the most important award she ever won, our campus award for creative excellence. She is a Henry Crown Fellow of the Aspen Institute. Also joining, George Strompolos is a founder and CEO of Fullscreen, which is often called the first media company for the connected generation. George double majored in mass communications and business administration here at UC Berkeley, and then began his career in business development in tech sector organizations such as Wired Magazine, CNET Networks, and Google. George's career at Google had many dimensions, but it's perhaps most notable for our discussion today in that he founded and created the YouTube Partner Program, and from there created more business models for featuring and sustaining a tremendous network of YouTube content providers. And that obviously has led to the founding of Fullscreen, where he's now developed, which is a company that now develops its own network of content providers for YouTube, and has, I think, signed close to almost 80,000 content creators who collectively reach over 600 million, 500 million subscribers. So, scale. Rolla Selbak is our third interlocutor tonight, and is an award-winning filmmaker whose credits include the internationally acclaimed feature film 3 Veils, a first of its kind to confront the delicate subject matters of arranged marriage, homosexuality, and love within the Muslim American subculture. She's the creator of the virally popular web series Pxl I'm Famous, which satirizes our culture's relationship with fame. Through the San Francisco Women's Film Institute leadership team, she's involved in initiatives specifically geared toward nurturing a generation of young female filmmakers. She's also creator and host of Girls Guide to Filmmaking, a monthly Spreecast event where she interviews influential women in film and the industry. So that's a pretty incredible lineup. And if there's a chance of thinking about how to make the internet beautiful, these 3 are have to be resources for helping us think about how. These are 3 who care about playing and also care about making sure that such tools stay beautiful for many kinds of work and many kinds of voices. So before I continue further, I hope they'll raise their hand and let you help me thank them for sharing time with us tonight. Okay? So I started to, in advance, I started to share some ideas for conversation, and I gave them one prompt to start things off. I was asking them to think about how things used to be and how things are now, especially when it comes to the world of video production, and whether or not or how they would understand a shift in what digital platforms and digital circulation did to their creation and to its creative activity and to the world that they understood themselves to be in. And everyone decided that they wanted to respond to that first prompt visually. So what we're going to do is get to know these 3 a little bit better by way of a kind of visual introduction to that question, a question around now and then. And I'll ask Tiffany to come up here, and as she does, I'll read a quote that I found from her that suggested a kind of now-then relationship. She says at one point, "I'll never forget the moment video was really available online for longer than 30 seconds with the founding of YouTube in 2005, sort of realizing that. I saw the power of the web plus film to spark change, and I knew immediately that I had to go back to making films full time. So after nearly a decade with the Webbies in 2006, the Moxie Institute Film Studio plus Lab was born." So tell us more, Tiffany. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shannon Jackson. She put such thought into this event. It was so wonderful. And I'm excited to hear what you both have to say. I'm going to go for 5 minutes. Let me get my timer. Okay. So It was such a great question to think about, how have things changed? Because I studied here at UC Berkeley. I used to go to the Pacific Film Archive, which is in a very different location, and watch old movies. And so I started here, and I made films on celluloid, and now the whole world has changed. So I'm going to take you on that journey for 5 minutes. These were my favorite films growing up, the golden era of 70s cinema. I then got a Macintosh computer when I was 14 years old. It changed my life. I was super into the Mac. I also had an Apple IIe. Any Apple IIe early Mac people? And I think it's always good to refresh our memory of what the world was like before the web, because we often forget what it was like. But that was what my life was like back in the 80s when I looked at the web. And I was fascinated with my computer and my modem. And I would connect to computers because there was no web around the world. And I thought, this is going to change the world. I ended up writing this proposal called the United Nations in Telecommunications and Software when I was in high school. It was too early. No one really had personal computers back then. And I went to Cal, and I was supposed to be a doctor, but I took an amazing film history class by Marilyn Fabe, who is amazing, and she just lit a fire in me about film theory and how the way we record reality changes reality. And I was completely hooked. I wanted to be a filmmaker, but of course at UC Berkeley there was no production at Cal back then. So the way that I would make movies is I would go to the city planning department and use their flatbed editing system, and I would get old slug from anthropology, and I would edit together movies from old movies. And so my whole filmmaking style, a lot of people say to me today, you know, you don't really shoot that much original footage, and it was out of necessity because there was no production here. I'm so grateful there was no production at Cal because it changed. God, I'm really gonna have to go quickly. So anyways, I would cut together old movies, and then I graduated from Cal, and I kept running out of money on my movies, so the way I would pay for my films is I would work in CD-ROMs. Does anyone remember CD-ROMs here? Okay. So that's how I would, and that's a defunct technology. I worked on the CD-ROM for Sting, and someone said, I have to show you this thing called the web. I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to change the world. I shortly thereafter founded the Webby Awards in my 20s, at the beginning of the first wave of the web, and used to do all these productions with short films, and it was a very exciting period. And then I was working on the Webbies, and Bush had just gotten into office, and the first thing he did was took away funding for international family planning, just like Trump did. And it pissed me off so much that I approached Planned Parenthood. And again, I was running the Webbies, and I said, I make all these short films for the Webbies. I'd like to make a short film on reproductive choice to re-engage my generation. And so I made this film called Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, which this is a still from. And it got into Sundance. Video was not yet available on the web, but it was starting. And I had one of those light bulb moments where I thought, it's going to be about a year when video's on the web. It must have been that quote. If I can combine everything I've learned from the Webbies for the last decade, combined with the power of film on the web, real social change can happen. And I'm just even getting chills thinking about it now because it was such a moment. It's like, I have to sell the Webbies. I got to go back to filmmaking. I sold the Webby Awards, started the Moxie Institute Film Studio, and our whole thing was experimenting with distribution. So this film was a short film, The Tribe, and we did all this interesting, like using Facebook was just coming on the scene, and how do you build conversation and community around it. And it became the first documentary to be #1 on iTunes. I say that mostly because we experimented so much with how to take a short doc and really create conversation and community around a film. I then went on to make a feature film that had theatrical release after going through that experience, which was so exhausting on a million levels. But I always thought of film as like movable feasts. So I always made discussion kits that went with my movies. So Connected was this feature documentary I did. But at the end of Connected, one of the ways the film ends is it asks, what's the potential of this many people being online? So we thought, let's try to make a participatory film. So we wrote a script, a Declaration of Interdependence. We asked people to read it on their cell phones and send it back to us, and we were able to make this short film. And it was and we asked people to send us artwork for the movie over the internet, and we did that through just a Facebook post and a tweet and a YouTube call for entries. And it was so exciting to me that I thought, I want to start a whole film series called Let It Ripple, Mobile Films for Global Change. And I think one of the most amazing technologies that not enough people talk about it is when they put the camera button on the front of the camera so you could film yourself. Because as a filmmaker, you would always have to send a crew to film someone and they get awkward and they're self-conscious, but to film themselves, like as a filmmaker, there's something so visceral about someone just filming themselves. And it was this raw footage I had never felt before. So I called these films cloud filmmaking, and I've made about 8 of them now. And I work with the State Department, and we get a lot of embassies involved in sending me footage and showing them. I don't have enough time to talk about that. I made this one film called The Science of Character, and I thought, I want to have a cloud film premiere. I'm going to offer the film for free and let schools around the world and companies show it. And we created something called Character Day. And to make a very long story short, the first year there was 1,500 screenings. The next year there was 6,700, and this last year there was 93,000 screenings of this film, 8-minute film, The Science of Character, all showing this short film. All the screenings, we would link them together with a global Q&A, so experts on neuroscience and social science of character development would speak every half hour. So whatever time zone you're in, you could tap into a really exciting Q&A. You were part of something bigger than one screening, and it's probably one of the most exciting things as a filmmaker to be able to really start a global conversation. I don't have time to show you that. That's what the global Q&A looks like. We have people all over the world contributing. We have discussion kits that we send people to use for the screening. And we just came out with an app and a hub that lets you go deeper into the concepts of the film. And I just came out with a recent film called 50/50 about the 10,000-year history of women in power. It's a 20-minute movie. The morning after the election, well, I was originally going to be making a series about this concept after the short. The morning after the election is like, I need to take everything I've learned from Character Day and apply it to gender equality and create 50/50 Day. It is May 10th. I hope you will all participate. I don't have time to show you that. Do I? No, I don't. We have 4,000 screenings happening at Cal, at places all over the world, talking about what it's going to take to get to a more gender-balanced world. They'll show the movie, and they will link with this global Q&A. This is the poster we're sending every screening. And Character Day is also happening this year. So then, what I used to do is I used to make a script on a Microsoft Word document that no one could collaborate with. I would then film on celluloid, or I would search in eccentric film collectors' closets to get their footage to edit it into one of my movies. I would finish the film in one language. I would hope some obscure film festival would show my short film. I would then hopefully go to that obscure film festival and do the Q&A by myself. I would sell no one my short film. I would have copies on beta and VHS. Now, I write a script on a Google Doc with at least 3 co-writers all writing simultaneously in different locations. Sometimes there'll be a writer in New York, LA, and San Francisco. We are all writing at the same time in each other's sentences. When people watch me do it, they're like, what are you doing? But I've been writing with this team for 10 years, and it's fabulous. I film some footage, but I ask everyone to film it on their cell phones and send it to me. I find stock footage online that I never could have had access to. It's like I'm a kid in a candy store with the internet. If I say blue 1950s car with a woman with a scarf blowing, I can find 20 shots of that. It's amazing for me. And then animations, I can create animations that you never could have afforded that software. And then to have a short film that could be broadcast to 93,000 screenings at once is an amazing thing. And there's no physical form of the film. When I give talks now, I bring my DVDs, and it's such a funny thing where I say, people come and buy them, and I say, do you even have a DVD player anymore? And most people don't even have it anymore, but they just want to bring something home. But it's such an unusual change. And there's, no physical form of the film. So, sorry, I went a little over. That's then and now. Thank you very much. I'll be up shortly. Okay.
Hit play. Hi. My name is George Strompolos. Thanks, Shannon, for having me. Tiffany, that was amazing. I graduated from Cal in 2002, studied communications and business. I actually came here to do architecture, and something happened during that time, which is the first internet boom. And all my friends were dropping out to start companies, and they were getting involved in that first wave of the consumer internet. And as a kid who grew up on basically MTV and AOL chat rooms, I was really excited by this massive change, and I knew I had to be part of it in some way. So I was fortunate enough after graduating Cal to find my way to Wired magazine, where we were covering this company called Google, which sounded really interesting. So I went to Google, and from Google had the chance to work on YouTube, which really set the path for my career, ultimately founding Fullscreen about 6 years ago. I'm the son of a piano player who owns a diner, and that's my dad. And my mom is a painter, and who now works at an art museum. And my older sister is a tremendous singer. My younger sister is a designer. And I basically come from a family where we appreciate the arts, and we appreciate different cultural perspectives and people challenging the norm and thinking outside the box, if you will. And one kind of through line in my career is I've always loved being around creative people and helping them become their best selves. And I was really fortunate when I was at YouTube that I had a first-hand opportunity to do that in a big way, which has really had a major impact on the world. But when I think back, one of the kind of pivotal moments for me was in 1987, so I guess that's 30 years ago now. I was 7. A new toy came out. Has anyone ever heard of the Pxl 2000? So it sounds really high tech. The Pxl 2000 is a camcorder, and it was made by Fisher-Price. Fisher-Price, as you guys may know, is a toy company. They make toys. They're now owned by Mattel, actually. And this camera was unbelievable because it put the power of creating film in your hand, and it was very much marketed to the youth. I'm going to tell a story about the Pxl 2000, but before I do that, I want to roll the Pxl 2000 commercial from 1987. So here we go.
You've always been heard, but now you can be seen. Introducing the Pxl 2000 camcorder. With the same audio cassette that makes your music, it makes videos. Sight and sound at a price that's easy to handle. Just shoot and play back on the Pxl 2000 TV. The Pxl 2000 video system. Now you can be seen and heard.
Pretty amazing, right? So imagine being 7-year-old me and seeing this commercial and your mind explodes, right? And of course, it wouldn't be a good 80s commercial without like an electric guitar and like a guy on a BMX, And so cool. So this camera was marketed for $200 and couldn't afford it. And it didn't sell very well. And then they cut the price in half to $100. So me, my friend Song, and my older sister, we pulled together some money. Our parents chipped in the rest, and we got a Pxl 2000. It changed my life. Like, this completely impacted what I've done in my work today. The amazing thing was, once we had that device in our hands, we were filmmakers. We would come home after school, we would develop little sketch comedies or whatever it was, and we would shoot it. And I don't know if you noticed, but that device recorded on a cassette tape, which was pretty interesting. And now remember, this is the days before eBay and everything, and it's a special cassette tape, and we had no idea how to get another one. So we're recording over and over the same cassette tape. And so our masterpieces, once we filled the tape, we had to record over them again. And the quality, they really kind of make you think it's like kind of decent quality in this. The thing was garbage. And it was grainy, you could barely hear the audio. And, one thing I think a lot about today is sharing. And so the way we would share, initially you had to buy the TV. I don't know if you saw they were selling you a TV too, so you could hook up the camera to the TV, but we didn't have that. Finally, they came out with an accessory where you could plug it into your home TV, and so we'd do that. And once in a while, we had something that we were particularly proud of, and we'd call our parents or our neighbors, and we'd like show them our film. And you know, we had this huge audience of like 4 people, right? And then again, we'd record over it and over. And so when I think about then, and I think about now, to me, I get really inspired by this notion of empowered youth with access to a global audience in the billions now. And, you know, a few major things have changed since then, which I think has created really the fertile soil for, one, a company like Fullscreen to exist, and two, and perhaps certainly more importantly, is for an entire new generation of creatives and filmmakers and makers and doers and artists and dreamers and entrepreneurs to at least have their work seen with no gatekeepers in the way, or if they're lucky, to build a career and maybe even become, you know, new voices in entertainment and culture. So while I was at YouTube, something was happening, and that was Eric Schmidt, Cal grad, former CEO of Google, now I think the chairman. He storms in and he says, enough with this garbage. I need some premium content. Those guys at Hulu, they got all the premium content. We need some premium content, right? And the problem was, at that time, we were being sued left and right. Viacom had sued Google for $1 billion. The record labels were suing us, you know, 7 different ways. And I was still a kid, really. I was 25, 26 years old. And so I'd be in these conference rooms, you know, with the long table and these big media execs and litigators on the other side. It wasn't just me. There were, like, other people there. But, like, I just had no business being there. And to be honest, I didn't care that much. What I didn't care that much about was this idea that we're going to take cool television shows and we're going to put them on a different tool, basically, put them online. Now, that is cool. That is innovative, and that, you know, I'm a consumer of that. There's nothing wrong with that, and, you know, some great businesses have been built on that. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. But to me, the exciting thing was that on YouTube, on our own platform at that time, we had young people, not just from LA, but from all parts of the country, all parts of the world, really. They were using YouTube to tell their stories. They were building audiences. They treated it like their own television channel. And more so than just television, they were connecting with their audience and learning in this kind of real-time cycle and developing an actual friendship with their audience, which is almost, you know, the audience will show you in the data that they feel like they're friends with these creators and these personalities. And so to me, this new world where you had access to really powerful tools for production, really cheap software or free software like Tiffany was talking about for editing, you know, way better than the Pxl 2000 now. We're talking, you know, modern DSLRs and iPhones and things like that. So you have these really powerful tools. You got fast internet, because now broadband internet was pretty common. Everybody had that at this point. And there was one missing ingredient. And so to me, the revolution was that all these new voices had a chance to emerge, but we had to make it sustainable. We had to make it possible for them to be rewarded for their creativity. And so that's why we built the YouTube Partner Program. The idea behind the YouTube Partner Program is super simple. If you get accepted into the program, we will place ads on your videos alongside them, and you, as the creator or the content provider or the filmmaker, you get a percentage of the ad revenue. The more viewership you get, the more money you make. Really simple concept, hard to build. But we built it. And because of that position, I became kind of the friend of all the first wave of talent, because I was the guy that helped them make money and use this platform to, like, you know, fulfill their creative ambitions. And meanwhile, the other, to be honest, 99% of Google were focused on how do we get TV on Google, right? And so I built, along with a group of about 5 other people, we built that program. I ran it for about 5 years, and by the time I left, it was about 40% of YouTube revenue was generated through that program. And you had all these new voices and content and entertainment and video blogging and all these different new formats that could have never existed on linear television or on the silver screen. So, but I was in this moment where, now this is like 2010, 2011, people just didn't really get it. And what I mean is I would go to meetings with our sales team. I remember being in a meeting with Revlon. Sorry, I didn't say that, with a big beauty brand. and they were telling me the economy was down at this time. It was like 2009. And they said, hey, when the economy's down, we actually do really well selling our low-cost products. So like eyeshadow and lipstick, we actually sell more of because it's a cheap pick-me-up for people, and they actually sell more during those times, which is interesting. At that time, the #1 female on the world's largest video platform, YouTube, was a young woman named Michelle Phan. Michelle Phan had more subscribers than any woman on the platform, and at that time, she exclusively made videos about eyeshadow and eye makeup. And so imagine me, the YouTube guy, sitting next to this, I don't know, CMO or whatever of Revlon, hearing her tell me this, and I couldn't wait to form a connection between Revlon and Michelle Phan. So I blurted out like all this cool stuff, and to my surprise, she laughed. And she said, oh, these kids, where do they find the time? Now that's not for us, right? So I was a little surprised. And so I was a little taken aback. Side note, Michelle Phan has gone on to create a $500 million company. She started her own beauty line. And she is probably like the next Oprah or Tyra Banks or something like that. So she frankly did it without Revlon. So power to her. And then in addition to that, I would then go to Hollywood and I would talk to the agents and the studios and the networks, and I'd say, hey, there's a new generation of creators. They've captured the hearts and minds of young people, and this is like the future of entertainment. These are the new voices, and blah, 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 my whole speech. And they would say, oh, that's low quality user generated content. That's not what we do. We do, premium shows and movies. And while I know that Hollywood has made some of the, best and most important entertainment the world has seen, at the same time, I thought you couldn't deny that the audience had taken a liking to this new realm of creators. So I knew that this revolution was happening. I was fortunate to be kind of in the epicenter of it all. And I said, you know what? I think this change in what's possible now is so profound that new media companies will be born. And I remember, you kind of talked about your aha moment, Tiffany. I remember having an aha moment. I was flying, I think, between like San Francisco and New York, just thinking, and I had that thought, like new companies are going to be born. And I was like, which one of my friends are going to do that? And I'm thinking about my buddies from Cal and this and that. And I'm like, wait a second, I should do that. And I had one of those moments. I was like, get me off this plane. And so I started Fullscreen. And the idea of Fullscreen is that we could create a next generation entertainment company rooted in the simple idea of empowering and serving and supporting creative individuals. And if we did that really well, better than anyone in the world, I'm talking individuals when they're just getting started as hobbyists with their tools, kind of like that video we saw, all the way up to the future, or the current really, stars of today's generation, massive global stars who make millions of dollars. So we support talent now from what we say start to stardom. And so the idea is if we could focus on this new generation of talent, we could build a really transformative entertainment company. And so we've been at that for 6 years. It's been a wild ride. Built a company with about 850 employees, offices all around the country, or the world really. And it's fun, and it's still rooted in that idea, which has been the through line in my life of supporting creative talent. Now I want to show one more video. It's about 2 minutes long. Is that okay? Okay. And it is actually a commercial that was made for Samsung. The purpose of this is not to advertise to you, but I think the producer behind this, a guy named Casey Neistat, really embodies the new creator movement. And this spot features a lot of Fullscreen stars, and in the spirit of then and now, I think you'll see a message of empowerment and youth who are making some cool things happen. So here we go.
To the haters, the doubters, my 7th grade vice principal. To everyone who's ever told anyone with a dream they can't. This video's for you. Keep your head down, follow the rules, do as you're told, play it safe. Wait your turn, ask permission, learn to compromise. This is terrible advice. If I were to write an autobiography, a book about my life, one title that would work would be Do What You Can't, because that idea encapsulates everything I've ever done. Like when I wanted to move to New York City and my dad was like, you can't, you don't have any money. Or when I first said I wanted to make movies and it was, you can't, you didn't go to film school. I want to have a TV show, you can't, Casey, you're not pretty enough. And to go even further, like if I were to characterize what this new generation of content creators and filmmakers, what we all do on YouTube and everywhere else is, we do what we can't.
Les 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
You can't be an action movie filmmaker, but you get your parkour friends to dress up like video game characters, jump off some buildings, and you can. Right, Devin?
Yes.
You can't have a talk show, but you have a webcam and you can.
Beautiful bastard. What?
This is my first YouTube video ever.
Next thing you know, you're interviewing the president.
I heard that you're going to be out of a job soon.
Well, maybe I'll start a YouTube show
That's
or
what
something
I'm
like
thinking.
You can't fly around New York City on a magic carpet, but get your electric skateboard, some PVC pipe, a great outfit, give Jesse a call, and you can. What do you think?
This is gonna be so dope.
You don't need gear, you don't need trucks or a crane, you don't need some big expensive camera rig that never works. When you're a creator, you don't need someone in your ear telling you what you can and can't do.
I'm racing the subway!
What you can and can't say.
I accidentally did the shocker. Oh my god.
They call us gamers, influencers, internet famous.
What the fuck does that mean?
But we know something they don't. You can start a vlog or a makeup channel. Or travel around the world with a gigantic piano playing it in beautiful places for interested people. When you're a creator, all you need is your phone, an internet connection, and a good idea. A story you want to share, something you need to say.
Confidence is within yourself.
And then the rest is history.
76, 77, 78, 79.
If you do it right, you get to quit the day job. Make friends from places you've never been. Meetups, collaborations.
It's just 2 boys and 2 video cameras.
A life moving so fast and so full, you won't even have time to process it.
Sur la plage, moment désertique.
So to my fellow creators, I say, keep creating, keep doing the work.
Hey guys! Au galop sur la plage, moment désertique. Au galop sur la plage.
And never forget, you don't have to listen to anyone, because in this new world, no one knows anything.
Hi
The
haters.
haters, the doubters are all drinking champagne in the top deck of the Titanic, and we are the fucking iceberg.
80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. 100, nos écueils, mon cercueil, vive les chevaux.
Do what you can't.
Thank you.
All right, can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. Cool. Hello everyone. Let me use this mic instead. Okay. So my name is Rolla Selbak. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to Berkeley and to the wonderful people, Shannon, Lauren, and everyone else. I'm really excited to be here with Tiffany, who's a shero of mine, and George, who's done amazing stuff for creators like me at Fullscreen. So for those of you who know me already, my name is Rolla Selbak. I'm a filmmaker, an activist, a huge, huge tech nerd. For those of you who don't know me, I'd love to give you a quick then and now of me and how I came to be here. So first question folks usually ask me is, sometimes is Rolla your real name? Like Rolla, is that like your real name? It is, but kind of yes, kind of no. Actually, my name is Rolla Selbak. I actually grew up in Abu Dhabi, and my family is Palestinian. I know I don't look Arab at all. Don't worry, I get that back home as well. They're like, are you? Yes, I am. It comes in handy when people don't know I speak Arabic. I can hear everything they're saying. So I did. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, and I'd love to tell you about 3 big shifts that happened in my life to make me the filmmaker I am today. First thing you should know is I love 2 things very, very much ever since I was a kid. One is technology and one is filmmaking. So when I was a kid growing up in the Middle East, I had 2 loves. One of them was my pet robot, and the other one was a huge family gargantuan VHS camcorder that was literally bigger than my head. And I would dress up my siblings in funny costumes, and we'd make music videos and commercials and all that other stuff, kind of like you, George. Of course, I'm not going to show any of them today because it's super embarrassing. We don't know each other like that yet. Maybe later. So in any case, so that was that. So the big shift, I talked about the 3 shifts. The first shift was the first Gulf War. First Gulf War happened, and me and my family moved to the United States. When I was in the US, I didn't know if I could become a filmmaker. I had no clue. It just seemed so daunting. The film and the celluloid that Tiffany were working with just seemed so intimidating. I didn't think I could do it. So I thought, you know what, maybe I could write, though. I could probably write, right? So as I was getting my computer science degree, like I said, huge tech nerd, I decided I wanted to write movie scripts. Only one problem is I had no clue how to do that. So I decided to go to a library to check out every book I could on how to write scripts. I literally did. It's like screenwriting 101, how to write scripts, and I just kept consuming scripts and scripts and scripts. After a few years, I actually came up with 2 full-feature scripts. I'm like, yes, Hollywood's going to want my scripts. And Hollywood's like, no, we don't actually. Sorry, not so much. I'm like, okay, well, if no one's going to make my films, maybe I should finally learn how to make my own films. And that was the second shift out of 3 in my life, which was digital video. I didn't understand film, 35 millimeter, 60 millimeter, but I did understand digital. I knew something about software. I knew something about the digital plane. So I decided to get a crew together. I wrote a script. And I had no clue about what to do on a crew. I was learning on the job. We finally made a film. We were so happy. But now it's like, okay, well, how do you get people to watch your movie? Like, where do you find an audience? I'm like, well, usually you go to movie theater to watch films. So why don't I call around and see if a movie theater will show my films? No one wanted to. I said, fine, I'll rent one of you theaters. And small independent theaters like, okay, if you give us money, we will. I'm like, okay. So I scrounged up a little bit of money, rented a movie theater, invited family, friends, and a few kind strangers to come, see this movie that I had made. Much to their chagrin, they didn't realize it was a 7-minute movie, and they were a little pissed, I think, about paying too much for parking, but that's okay. I did it finally, yay! So now I'm making content, keep making content. And at the time, manila folders were my friend because I would just create content, put them in DVDs, and send them to film festivals and producers and filmmakers and anyone who had a mailing address that would listen to me. I was getting some traction here and there. I was getting to a few film festivals, but nothing that was truly groundbreaking. And I was feeling very self-conscious about myself at the time, which I don't like to admit, but it's true. I'm like, is it because I didn't go to film school? Is it because I didn't have the film connections? Is it because I didn't go through the traditional route to become a filmmaker? And that's when the third shift happened, which was YouTube. YouTube and online video. That is really, really where it really changed myself as a filmmaker and making content. It was where I was able to immediately connect with audiences. Hitting that upload button was the most exhilarating thing ever. And it doesn't stop being exhilarating, by the way, even today. It's one of my favorite things to do. You immediately connect with audiences, and that ended up being my film school. That's where I learned how to connect with audiences, what they like, what they don't like. I was experimenting all over the place with storylines and characters and, messing with, linear and nonlinear timelines. And that's where I actually shaped myself as a filmmaker. So I owe it all to online video and platforms like YouTube and Fullscreen and such. So that's that. So I can't wait to talk more about the way that YouTube and online video has shifted all of us as filmmakers and creators. So thank you so much.
Mic's on. That was fabulous. And I wonder, actually, even before we start, whether any of you have, if there's anything about each other's stories or images that struck you that you want to share with us or share with each other quickly.
Do you have any sway with the Webby Awards? We're up for a couple nominations this year.
You know, I mean, I loved hearing the moments that, you know, in YouTube. Am I on? Can you hear me? Wait, did I turn it on? That's a good question. Okay. I love those moments where, you know, light bulb goes off, and just at different points in your career, how much you just like, you see what your next path is going to be. So I loved hearing that. And it's interesting. I don't use YouTube the way you said when you upload it. Yeah. But, you know, I know some writers will say they kind of upload an article and you expect something to happen. But on YouTube, it really is this kind of immediate response. Like, I always think of it as like a call-in response.
Yeah, that struck me too, Rolla. Have you guys ever like thrown an event and you get like the jitters before the event? You're like, are people going to show up? Is it going to be great? Is the experience going to be awesome? And you kind of like, it's that moment. And I think the way you described the upload process kind of is that same exhilaration. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so a couple of things. As everyone was talking, I started to think one of the things we've been thinking about throughout this series is about how technology is changing art forms in addition to how it changes distribution for sharing and talking and dialogue. And it was interesting as everyone was talking, there was a vacillation between, say, using a word like film or sometimes documentary or story and content. And there was a back and forth between creators and content makers, filmmakers and content makers. And I sort of wonder about how you handle the relationship between, you know, where you might come from within film and this word content, and that is
the
word
content.
Okay.
Why do you hate
I hate it. It
Why?
seems like a box, like content. It's something you're commodity. I mean, it's like you're selling a box of. I think all the people that talk about content, it's like, how are we going to sell this content? I don't know. It really bugs me. I hate it.
It's just
and I don't know if I've ever said that in an audience or haven't.
I'm so glad you heard it here. Woo!
It's just one of those words that I just feel like is very like boxy content. And to me, movies move you. I love that word. Movies move you. And I still sometimes use the word film, I think, because I was trained in film, but I love the word movie because it's very evocative, whereas content is very...
Okay, so what about those or moments when you need to use the word content, or that there's some sort of industry dialogue going on that whether you, Tiffany, or others, I mean, why is the word content becoming the word that is the umbrella term?
I would say maybe because it's diversified in form so much,
right.
In terms of what's being made. You know, are you telling a story? Are you just engaging with an audience? Are you, making something quick and cheap or expensive? And, is it in micro bursts? Is it like one giant long piece of work? And it gets tricky to describe all those things. And I think maybe, people have used that bucketed term, which kind of becomes pretty boring and commoditized almost, like you said. I noticed on the talent side, the talent always talk about filming, which I think is interesting because most of our talent's pretty young, and I don't think they've ever actually used film before. But I think one of the reasons they do that is because it's a verb, right, to film, and so it implies that you're actively doing it, and so we talk about filming, we talk about story. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess you can't use contenting as a word.
Contenting.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
contenting yesterday on set. Yeah, no, okay, I'm with you now. Okay, you convinced me. You've convinced me. Yeah, no, I think George is absolutely right. I think it is because you do have film, you have video, you have all sorts of mediums. So I think content just ended up, if there's a better word out there, if anyone has a suggestion,
Even video too, right? Like if I create a snap story, am I making video? I think I am. What about a Musical.ly, or an animated GIF or a boomerang on Instagram? Are those video? Probably, but you have to use these kind of broad terms sometimes because there's so much diversity in there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then our title, our subtitle includes this notion of the age of YouTube, and we have it there sort of cryptically. Maybe everybody invoked YouTube, and also it is also both a particular company, and it seems to also signal something bigger than it, the way Kleenex stands in for tissue or something. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about YouTube, or about also the kind of you sort of makers or filmers or contenters that are now YouTubers, that are often called YouTubers, and thinking about that even as a professional category, or as a domain and medium. Just thinking about that as a profession, what it means artistically, stylistically, economically.
I could take this to start maybe. So it is this kind of new creative class, right? And it happened to be that one platform got to scale and also had a revenue model, right? And that was YouTube. You think about Facebook's bigger than YouTube. I watch a lot of video on Facebook, but pretty much none of the content providers make money on Facebook. Twitter, massive
But they're just about to
platform.
start making their own original content.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Instagram.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah. And so, you had this kind of economic incentive for creators, and so they became very wed to YouTube as a platform, and they self-identify, many of them, as YouTubers. What's gotten interesting as all these platforms have started to have some form of video, you notice they kind of stop calling themselves YouTubers, because they don't want to pigeonhole themselves or lock them to one certain platform, and they want to be known as creators or talent or filmmakers, storytellers. It's a sort of new phenomenon for sure, or at least in the last 5-10 years.
I actually really like the word creator, because who wouldn't? That's the first ultimate creator. But I do love the word filmmaker. I just love anything with maker in it, and it just describes the act
Movie
of making.
maker.
Yeah, movie
Those
maker.
are your two favorite words.
I say filmmaker. I'm a filmmaker. Actually, sometimes I say I'm a conversation maker, because that's ultimately the goals of my film. So the films are a conduit for some bigger conversation. But I do like that kind of creator has become the term, because there is so many different mediums that you're making it in.
I will say one thing about financial models and revenue models. I do think that there are some few, I think like you talked about, some few superstars who were able to actually harness the web and actually make a living off of it. But I do think that also a lot of creators use YouTube and other online videos as audience generators and connectors. And what does that do? That ends up making you, as a creator, your value isn't just the talent that you have, isn't just the content that you create, but it also ends up being the audience that you are able to reach, and you've also done the legwork for proving out a genre, a story, a character. So actually you end up being more valuable to, let's say, more traditional studios and such in that way. So then as you see, people like Issa Rae, on HBO picked up Insecure, High Maintenance, Broad City. I mean, I could go on. So I think that's also another way to think of YouTube as maybe an enabling revenue versus maybe making revenue, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, could we think a little bit more about the economic aspect? Because that's also been a theme throughout our series. Also, when we talk with critics, in a world where everybody's a critic right now, it's hard to be a professional critic if everyone's on, and then there is a kind of question about whether or not these platforms are they're so fabulous because there is that sort of widening of an audience, because it also allows a wider variety of voices to have an audience, and at the same time, exactly as you said, it's not necessarily a way to make money itself. And some questions about whether or not it on the one hand distributes creativity, and on the one hand takes salaries away from creatives. I mean, that's the perhaps over-polarized way of thinking about it. And, all of you are finding different ways of moving, it seems.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about that a lot. When I was at Cal, I took Econ 101, and the only thing I remember is supply and demand, right? and so if you think of the last decade, you have this explosion in supply of content creators who have the chance to get your attention, right? Because remember, 10 plus years ago, gatekeepers, people using technology that like didn't, you know, get out to the world. And so content came from very few sources. I mean, stories came from very few sources. And so boom, you got YouTube, you got, you know, social media, you got all this stuff, and now supply all over the place, right? And most of this is an ad-supported medium, most of it. And that there's still only like 100 companies in the Fortune 100, right? Or the Fortune 500, whatever it's called. And so the kind of demand side of this equation hasn't really changed, right? And so you have the same amount of money now going to a lot more supply. And now you have creators that are really like unable to stand on just what they made. And I think you have two really good examples on this panel here of people that understand you have to make great content. You have to have a great idea and you know, it has to resonate with someone. But the way you start a conversation or the way you develop an audience is like such an equal part of the formula now. And so I think, yeah, that does cause a shift in who gets the work, who makes the money. But it's kind of like turning itself inside out a little bit, and new skills are now valued.
I mean, in my career, and especially running a film studio, we've had so many different business models. It's been really interesting because we, with Connected, we had investors, and you know, we would sell that film, and each sale, you know, it's like selling a widget. No, I mean, just the amount you need to sell in order to make your investors back money, and the theatrical, which is a crazy model. And really, theatrical was just for the New York Times review. Which was worth it because you got to put it on the DVD to sell the DVD. I mean, I really look back at that theatrical, which I said was a very stressful, you know, leaving my family on the weekends, going to a different city opening, and it was expensive, it was exhausting, but in the end, it was marketing. Because everyone still wants that New York Times review. And I have to remind people that as much as there's still things that are valuable. And as a filmmaker, I wanted that review. I wanted that because it validated this other set of systems so I could make more movies.
Premium content.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so that was one model. And then after I made Connected, AOL had seen a short film I had made, one of these cloud films. And they're like, we want to pay you up front to make 8 short films, and we're going to sell ads against it. And that series did really well. And they paid me up front, which was fantastic. I was like, okay, this model can work. But then everyone had to watch the same ad before every movie, which I had to like I had to get my head around that. And that was okay. I got my head around that because it paid. But, you know, and it got 40 million views. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But then that model, you know, is a very changing model. Then with the Global Character Day, I'm raising it from foundations and donors and saying, you want to make impact? I can make you impact. And, you know, I could either I have a small team, and either we can spend our time making sure somebody paid an invoice for a film, or I can get that film out super wide with my audience. So now that I've had every single different business model, and sometimes simultaneously happening at my film studio, and I mean, it's, you know, just like what you're talking about econ, it's so fascinating on what you spend your time doing. You know, because it's all about time, creativity, and you know, your effort. What's most important? And again, if you want to make social impact, which is usually my goal, or if you want to make money, which can be other people's goals. I've never been super money motivated, so I mean, it's great when it happens because then you can hire more people to make more films. But I think I've always just been struck about how your motivation changes with these different business models.
I think one thing I will say, it's interesting. I maybe on the flip side, I do see what you mean, and of course the question of, you know, is the internet now saturating, you know, creation so much that it's taking away jobs? I think was one of your questions. I actually think on the flip side of it, I don't think it's an accident that the web domain and TV have both been experiencing a golden age at the same time. I actually don't think that that's a mistake. I do think it's because there have been a lot of creators and writers who have cut their teeth on the web, through the web, who've actually been able, to go make more work. I mean, even independent films, like people like Jill Soloway. I mean, she was an independent filmmaker, and so of course, anytime I mention, one, I understand that they're still few and far between, but I think that the web has really pushed TV into making better content. Even content that's more female-oriented or that has diversity in it. They saw that everyone was flocking to the web to get that stuff. They're like, wait a minute. Not only should we do that, but we can hire people who've proved out that they can do that now. So.
Great. That also starts to, you've all brought it up in different ways already. If we're thinking more about the political effects and the political possibilities of these platforms. So on the one hand, that's, I guess, a question about Tiffany's notion that having impact, that you might be using and creating for impact, for social impact. There's also another question, and it can be a secondary question, is how much or whether the finding your audience and establishing your audience disrupts or contributes to the siloing of audience that we're concerned with, I think, particularly now. How much it actually helps circulate and encourage political discussions across difference, and how much it perpetuates political positions within particular communities and networks.
Yeah,
So,
I've been thinking a lot about this because, on my different social medias, I have different appetites for discourse. Like on Facebook, actually, I don't want to have a lot of, that's kind of more of a social friend space for me. Twitter, I follow people that I don't agree with, and I use Twitter more as interfacing with ideas that I wouldn't normally. And these global days, I think the reason why they're so interesting to me is if I have a film about equality and the importance of gender equality, and it's shown at an entire company, it's going to reach people that would not normally go to a film on gender equality. So if a school district participates in 50-50 Day, there's going to be a lot of people I'm going to reach I would not have reached. So everyone's talking about these siloed, well, you're only talking to liberal. Well, no, I've got a lot of places that I know it's going to... The whole concept with these days is instead of getting people to go to a theater, let's bring the film to where they already gather. It's offered for free, so there's no friction, and just expose people that wouldn't normally be in the conversation and have men involved and different audiences. So that is my workaround, the siloed, because it's true. We are becoming... I go to this great website that I highly recommend called allsides.com. It is so good. Get out of your bubble and go to the site every day, and you will see the top story from the right, the middle, and the left, and you're just like, we are in 3 different universes. So I think about that a lot because I'm in that. We were all self-perpetuating that Trump wasn't going to win.
I would say it's really interesting now more than ever, and I don't know if we're just noticing it now because of political climate, but seeing your own opinion back at you has become a form of entertainment, whether it's reading it or watching it, right? I don't mean to be lewd, but it's this opinion masturbation, essentially. It's like, wow, this is amazing. It's like, oh, that's because it's my opinion, okay. And so because of that, what ends up happening is us as creators, sometimes we see that easy bait and we understand, that, hey, we can actually write. So I think us as creators have the absolute responsibility, I think, in this day and age, if exactly like you do, want to make social impact, that we actually make content that provokes, not doing that. So for instance, what Van Jones was doing with Messy Truth, or my docuseries A Day with a Muslim, where you're bringing people together that wouldn't be brought together otherwise. I think you brought up a fantastic Fullscreen series.
House
that you
Divided.
have House Divided as well.
It's House Divided. So we took basically a tried and true format, which we stole from MTV, borrowed from MTV, called The Real World. You guys know that. And we cast people according to their basically political beliefs. This is before the election, so we had the diehard Bernie guys and like the Hillary supporters and the Trump supporters and we had like the young black Republican and we had the Muslim guy who was in the closet and hadn't come out yet put them all in a house and had like challenges and activities and then had a debate every night. And we're really proud of it actually because it has kind of the guilty pleasure things that we all like about reality TV, like people hooking up and fights and stuff like that. But then ultimately the real story is that these people found friendship in their differences, right? And it was actually really fun to watch. I just one other thought on this.
Doing it sounds so needed right now.
It's funny because we thought it was going to be a one-off, and so we did it I think we released it in September or something on the Fullscreen app, and we've had a lot of fans be like, "When are you doing another one?" So I think we're gonna this summer tape another one with the same concept generally. One other comment on the subject I want to make is, this idea of social media stardom and making money through your art on social media and your audience that you've built is relatively new. And I think in this first chapter, it's been kind of like a glorified popularity contest. How many followers can you get? And you start to find ways to use these platforms to get more audience. And that isn't always by making the best stuff. It's by playing the game. And it reminds me of high school in a lot of ways, and in some ways bad, and in some ways vapid. We kind of don't say this kid's gonna be a star. The fans, the audience tells us who's successful, and we kind of follow along. I think in the last 6 to 9 months, because of the political climate in the United States, I think a lot of creators are looking themselves in the mirror and saying like, what do I have to add to this conversation? And so you have these, again, younger people, teens, 20s, 30s, that are like, have been playing the game of popularity, and suddenly they're kind of looking at their body of work and saying like, what have I added to society? And so I think it's a little bit of a reality check. Now on the flip side, you have corporations that are having that same kind of thought, and you get like the Kendall Jenner Pepsi ad, and they take it too far. So like, don't do that. But I think it's been an interesting moment and thing to witness.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we could see if there's some questions from the audience or follow-ups or comments that are percolating, even as probably if we have more questions for each other. Somebody here?
We gotta run one of the mics.
We're monopolizing all of the microphones, so I'm happy to distribute mine. Yeah, it's okay.
I'm curious how you see the YouTubing affecting another trend, which is shorter and shorter attention spans, micro delivery rather than long content or deep content and so on. And I think you could probably make an argument either way that this is going to foster one thing or another, but I haven't heard that critical viewpoint yet.
Yeah, Rolla talks about that actually a bit. Yeah, I've seen some quotes from you.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Hopefully they're the same ones and I don't contradict myself.
I have done my research.
So that's a fantastic question. The one thing I will say, I do see your point, and it's true, especially with the autoplay feature that came on like last or 2 years on Facebook. Like it's very common that you see ourselves, right, going through content just like it's M&Ms. You're just going through it. But I want you to think about also, again, if you think about TV and series, and how long series are and how many series people are watching right now. I mean, if I ask any one of you, you at least watch one series and complete few seasons of a series recently, right? Who has here? Everyone. So it's true that yes, our attention spans are shorter in certain contexts, but I also think there is a hunger for connection, for longer arc stories and characters. And once the season is done, you almost feel like, oh my God, my friends are gone, right? And that's also another phenomenon that we could talk about. But I don't know. I just want to say that yes, it's true that it's easy for us to say that, oh my gosh, things we're making are so short and no one is paying attention anymore. But the truth is they are paying attention. It's just in different contexts and to different things.
Yeah, I heard someone talk about that. Like feature filmmaking is like you're making a 9-hour movie now, and you're just breaking it into 30-minute episodes. It's such an interesting way to think about it. You're actually making a much longer movie. the way you need to think about story. I mean, traditional story arc and structure, and you have to now like you spend so much time with the characters, and so it's interesting. I mean, but I personally, I mean, I see my attention change. Like I love to read, and I read, and then I need to check Twitter. I'm like, what are you doing? I can see my own just my attention change, and it's nothing that we have 2 daughters, and we're like one of the only families that haven't gotten our 8th grade daughter a smartphone. She has a dumb phone. That's what they call it. It's a yeah. You have to do too. Good, you're a smart man. Because she's a big reader. She reads a good 3 hours a day, and I don't want to change that just soon enough, And yeah.
I guess what you're saying is there's a lot of stimulation online, not just video consumption. From what you're saying, Twitter and Facebook.
I mean, on the one hand, because I was always, if you can imagine my whole career, I was like the Webby's person. So everyone was saying the web's going to destroy society. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. But I also, I wrestle with it. My family and I unplug from all technology 1 day a week. We have for 7 years. I do all these things, she doesn't have a smartphone because I do also worry about deep thinking, and I do. I would be lying if I didn't say, as much as this is an incredible, tool, that we are losing some other things. So I try to create all these boundaries.
That's interesting. I have a problem, basically. I'm one of those bad cases that you're hypothesizing about. I can't wake up until I'll just look for something, and then I'll look for something to really grab me, and then I can wake up on my phone. It's sort of a joke, and it's self-aware. Yeah, and it's driven by an unquenchable curiosity, right? I want to know more. I want to learn more. I want to research. I want to see what this person's doing, that person. I want to find something I've never seen before. And I'm sure a lot of people in this room do that. And sometimes I wonder if, we're part of the problem because we're making a lot of that stuff, right? But I will say, we look at some interesting data all the time. And so we have an app, and it's where we make our best content, and we charge $6 a month. It's like a subscription service. And so, when we started to go into charging for our content instead of just the ad-supported model, we wanted to understand, would young people who typically don't have credit cards, would they pay for this stuff? And so we tried to understand what was worth paying for them, what was premium. And, you might think it's like production value or, great storytellers or A-list talent or things like that. And the only discernible point that we could get from all the research was it's long. And so the audience told us, they're like, if it's long, there's a higher perception of value from the content. Probably because we've been trained that way for many decades, right? And so we make content of all lengths, but I thought that was an interesting point. And it's interesting, Facebook, we were talking to them recently. You mentioned they're doing more originals, and they've basically done the same research and came to the same conclusion. And so they're like, our original stuff has to be long because we have to create the perception that it's premium and important. And so,
what was their time frame that they told you was considered long?
They said 22 is the shortest
minutes.
they'll do.
Which is, essentially the size of a TV episode, comedy.
It doesn't mean they don't value it and it's not important if it's short. It just means maybe it's not as valuable in their eyes.
There's one there, and then we'll come back.
Great. Yeah, thank you for your time. This question was based on a comment that Tiffany made. What sort of economic model could work to eliminate that dichotomy between, making money or making a difference? What sort of principles have been adopted by perhaps the YouTube Partner Program that really work to make it so the creator doesn't have that choice of, I want to make a difference, or, man, I really have to make money? Thank you.
Well, I think, like I told you, I have several things going on usually at the same time. And, to be completely transparent, I speak and I charge for that, which probably comes from the fact that I've made movies. And so I can also, I don't have just one revenue stream, and that's always a good thing, is you should never just have one revenue stream. I had a friend who did something on Facebook, and then Facebook one day changed the model, and then they were like, they're out of business. So the one thing about all these social channels is that or maybe it was YouTube. I mean, they're changing their models so much. So my big thing always just in life is have a diversified revenue stream. I think that's like business 101. So you're not relying on one thing. So I think, I mean, at our film studio, we have like 5 different revenue streams. So, you know, I think that's important. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
I think go back to what George was saying in his economy like 101 class. I think it really is about supply and demand. If there is a demand for it, I really do believe that people can make money from it. And if the demand is there to see social impactful content, I do think everyone, including corporations and ad agencies, will jump to it. But if there isn't, you cannot create demand out of nothing. Right, so I do think it is a demand and supply and demand equation there.
Yeah, it was a bit of a segue off of what he was talking about. I thought maybe you could address the issue of one of the most interesting features I've noticed in my teenage son using YouTube is the speeding up of the content and the absorption of the stimulus at like 1.5, 2 times. And so he's actually listening to things that would take me an hour, and he's absorbing them within such a short period of time. So I don't think so much you're losing that attention, you're just changing the velocity, and that speaks to our entire society. I just wondered what you guys thought.
That's been proven, by the way. It's really interesting to hear that observation in your personal life. You kind of have the millennial demographic, which more or less adopted technology or internet and online video in real time, social media. And then you have kind of the next generation, which is more or less in their tweens and teens right now, that, you know, the press has dubbed Gen Z. We at Fullscreen, we call them mutants. And the reason is, in a positive way, in like an X-Men kind of way, because they have increased their processing speed. So your son or daughter, I didn't catch, their generation, they have evolved, they have mutated past the rest of us. And I think that's kind of exciting.
It's like speed reading, but for video.
Well, that's the thing about the reading, because my daughter always is watching it with the subtitle. I mean, with the, you know, words on the screen. And actually video, you know, all the videos, if you don't have the words on the screen, they're not as watched. Because people might have the volume off and be at work and watching it. So it's just such a, I used to be really, you know, if I made a film for the big screen, we spent so much time on the animation and you wanted to be the big screen, and now I've completely let that go. I'm like, however they're receiving, but I do think that's interesting. Like, I know some podcasts I do that, you know, if I want to get to the heart of the idea, or a TED Talk, I'm like, I'm not going to watch 18 minutes. Like, where's the transcript? I want the gist of the idea. And it is interesting about mutating into a new life form.
Well, I would say that I know it might seem like, you know, little foreign to you know, folks of older generation, but I do think like throughout media, right, there's always been changes, and always the changes haven't been understood by the quote older generation and the younger. You know, even when the talkies came or when color came, it's like no one wants to see color, no one wants to hear people speak, no one wants to hear things on, you know, twice the speed. It's like, well, maybe they do. You know, I feel like I'm actually a big proponent of not judging how people consume, because I do feel in general the internet inherently should be democratic in that way. Yeah. So if, let's say, you know, your child wants to watch that, as long as it's healthy and not, you know, kind of damaging to other things like how they connect with other, you know, human species, then I think we shouldn't judge, and I think we should listen, and we should see, and we should observe, and try and adapt to new ways like that.
So I'm a content creator with a good amount of YouTube subscribers, and I was wondering, you guys could answer this question, where else should I put my videos besides YouTube? Like, what other platforms? Because I know Twitter's starting to monetize YouTube, or videos, and then so is Facebook.
A real professional advice question. Yeah.
I mean, depends a little bit on what type of content you're making, but without going into that, you know, there was this like school of thought about 10 years ago where it was like, I think they called it like super distribution, where it was like, put your thing everywhere, you know? And that's not necessarily a bad idea, but the problem with that idea is we were talking earlier, like creating great stuff is important, but the art and science of developing an audience and engaging with a fan base and a community is as important. And so to some extent, it almost doesn't matter where you put it. It matters how well you do that second thing, right? If you make videos about craft beer, right? Put it on YouTube, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram. All of the above or just one, doesn't matter. What's more important is that you look up every blog about craft beer and you email every person who's ever written about craft beer and you reach out to them and say, hey, I just did this incredible video about this new craft beer and I thought you might appreciate it, and it'd really be awesome if you embedded me on your next blog post, or maybe you can come to our next shoot or something like that. Like that's what almost matters more. And so Facebook is investing so much into video right now, and so what's cool about Facebook is the graph kind of takes care of itself. There's a natural virality to it there, but yeah, I mean, put it wherever and focus on the audience development side. I think that's most important.
And do you think YouTube's going to be around forever? I guess my question is.
Probably not. I don't know.
I don't know that.
I think, it's owned by Google, so sure. Yes, it will be around forever, sir.
Quote
No,
her.
I don't know. But I will say, can I just say one thing to what you're saying? I'm a big proponent of experimenting. So let's say if you're not sure where else you want to post, I'll give you a good example with my video. I tried to experiment with Facebook, and I thought, okay, usually I put stuff on YouTube. Let me experiment with this video on Facebook and see if I can, kind of label hack it in a way that we can share and algorithmically, and do all that stuff. And it turned out, funny enough, just in my experiment, that YouTube ended up winning out. I literally did nothing on YouTube. I was just telling you the story. It was for my video, Trump supporters spend a day with a Muslim. I thought, okay, let's try Facebook. Facebook got 21K. YouTube, I didn't even look at it. I actually forgot I uploaded it to YouTube until I checked, and I found there's like 1.2 million viewers. So, it really does depend. I do think YouTube's algorithms, especially if you label things correctly and if you keyword them correctly, do actually end up getting a lot of views today. Doesn't mean Facebook won't, kick ass, soon. I do believe very much in Facebook's technology. So I would say experiment. Definitely experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment, and you'll probably find what's right for you.
So I guess right now that creators are driving popularity, but I wonder do you worry that in the future the ad revenue will be driving popularity? And how do the algorithms work as a YouTube partner, for example? I guess you get more revenue if somebody watches the ad rather than stopping after 2 seconds or 5 seconds and skipping the ads. So I think in traditional media, it was so the content became so ad driven, unless you were selling cars or makeup, you were not going to get published. Is that what is going to develop, do you think, on YouTube? Could you explain how the revenue model works?
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So it's a great question, first of all. So for the most part, on ad supported platforms like YouTube, the creator creates something, the audience watches it, and they're exposed to an ad. If they don't skip the ad, because most of the time you can skip the ad, if they don't skip the ad, the advertiser is charged, and the creator is paid a split, right? There was a big hubbub about all this about a month ago, where a journalist in the UK did a story and found that there were some extremist videos on YouTube, like ISIS, kind of like bad stuff, and they had taken screenshots of the screen, and there was like a like a Ford ad or like a AT&T ad. And so imagine you're the CMO of this company and you've been told by Google to give us billions of dollars in advertising, and suddenly you see a screenshot in the news of your ad running next to an ISIS video. You're furious, right? And that's kind of the downside of these democratic, open platforms where anyone can participate. And so I think, by the way, when that happened, Google's market share went down $35 billion, right? And now this is in the grand scheme of their scale, is a really small problem. But again, if you're the CMO and you see it once, it's a big problem, right? And so there's this boycott happening right now of major advertisers boycotting Google, partially as a leverage play to say, hey, Google, you better give us better prices because you got some bad videos and all that. But I think creatively, which is maybe more the soul of your question, you do see talent and creators playing into, what is going to appeal to the algorithms, and what, 7 minutes you can run 2 ads, right? So you see a lot of 7.5 minute videos, right? Because you can get 2 ad impressions, and the creators know that. And the creators know that if you do family vlogs with 2 parents and 2 kids talking about their family, you're going to get those Tide ads and those Pepsi ads and those Unilever ads. So people do play to that quite a bit. But that is a thing, and maybe that's good or bad, probably kind of bad. But on the flip side, you just have people that are just in it for their art, and they just want to create and connect, and they're a little bit agnostic to the ad side. So it's good question.
What do you guys see as the role of immersive media, immersive storytelling, kind of in the next generation and even current generation?
Do you want to define what you're saying is immersive? Because I might have a different...
Immersive media being virtual reality,
VR.
360 VR, all that type of stuff.
I mean, as a documentary filmmaker, I love the really understanding a situation by being in a VR environment. Like, the ones that have really struck me are when you really are in someone else's shoes. And I think it was a Syrian refugee one I saw a year ago, and then one that blew my mind was I was a tree in a forest about to be chopped down, and I've never, and I love trees anyways, but I was the tree, and I was crying in the end, and I just feel like the empathy that you can feel, and I think a lot of documentaries are trying to get you into an experience that you're not having, so you can really empathize, and I think that's very powerful for that. But most of the VR I still feel makes you feel very alone. It's like the biggest thing is I always think of filmmaking as this like communal, like I love experiencing it with others, and most VR so far is still like I'm by myself on Mars or but I think there's a lot of potential there. It's just not, it's just starting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's quite isolating today, right? And I do think it's just because of how the literal hardware of it. I think the fact that you have to stick goggles on, it's still clunky, right? But I do think that, what augmented reality, like what Magic Leap was doing, like with holograms and stuff, I think it is just my own one-person prediction opinion. I think as soon as we are able to remove those goggles and see and immerse, that's where it's a game changer. And we're getting there. We have to have the heavy clunky, we have to have the VHS before we have the YouTube, we have to have the clunky Oculus, but yeah, exactly. So I see amazing things for it, and I'm really excited for it.
I love what you said about movies being, vehicles for empathy. Actually, Roger Ebert called the movies empathy machines, and that's one of my favorite quotes. And I think there's such a chance to do that even more so in VR. I actually am a big proponent. I think within the next decade, picture your upper middle class suburban, house, and the family's got some extra spending money, and where maybe a family would like create a room in their house with the pool table, and like we could shoot pool. I think there are going to be rooms for immersive entertainment, and that'll be a thing that people do. I don't know if you guys have tried Tilt Brush. That blew my mind. Which is a painting program in VR, and that's probably the Mac Paint version of as far as this industry's come. So it hasn't come very far yet.
Like the X whatever. Yeah, PXL,
the
Pxl
VR.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that gives me faith in humanity when I don't have faith is lately the last 6 months but Netflix and people are watching documentaries more than they ever have, which is yes, because I was thinking when you go see a documentary, I go on date night every week. We go to the movies, we go in a movie theater, which I still love. And sometimes we pick a narrative where we want to escape, and then sometimes we pick a documentary when we want to be challenged by something. And Netflix, it's one of their biggest watched categories are documentaries. So it's really exciting on this one hand, that people want to be exposed, they're curious, they want to be challenged. So that's one of those moments of just faith in just humans.
I actually think it's a fascination with reality because we have been so disconnected from it recently. I really do think so. And I think, in this world of like Instagram, filters, I think there's a reason why when you hashtag no filter, there's like, whoa, no filter. I think we are really hungry for no filter and for reality,
But
actually.
you think VR satisfies that?
I think it could. Absolutely. Like from what you mentioned, it's like when you're on the ground and experiencing what a Syrian refugee might, as reality, as like, let's say on the ground journalism, and that you're able to be with the journalists as they're going in. I absolutely think that's real.
Feels real to
yeah,
you, basically. is what
absolutely.
you're
And
saying.
you're witnessing it, right, as it's happening.
Yes, I want to ask a question, basically follow up what Deepak was asking, and also another question earlier was that now if we are really looking at future technology, before technology, previously we have we are calling movies like content or movie or video, right? Now we have virtual reality, we have interaction, we have tilt brush, right? So we talk about now how are those technologies going to change how people are going to distribute their content online? Are they going to still going through the YouTube channel? Because I know that YouTube has 3D designated channel. Also, YouTube has a VR channel. But as a whole, do you see a change about how people distribute the channel and publish their channel in a more immersive, more interactive fashion? Or people eventually just call all of them games? Or I don't know, what do you guys see the future, how you guys are going to distribute the content?
You make your VR film, how are you going to get it out? Yeah. Or how do you imagine others will help you figure it out?
I mean, I still, I was just at the San Francisco Film Festival opening night last week, and boy, nothing replaces a packed theater at the Castro. Nothing. I mean, just nothing. Like, you're laughing and crying with 500 people, and with all these new technologies, ticket sales are still going up in the movie theater. And as a filmmaker, I love the in-person screenings as much as I love the reach of the online. So, William Gibson writes about, a lot of people always think that something's going to replace something, but it's additive. So I think for different experiences, you're going to crave different ways to receive it. And, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're describing is sort of the problem today, right? Is there's some good experimentation happening. People thinking of virtual reality, augmented reality, not only as like 3D movies, right? But, experiences. I've seen some amazing things where, it's based on meditation, or it's for athletes to get ready for the big game. And it's like, or like you're a tree in a forest. I mean, that's incredible. But there, no one's really won the distribution side of it.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I think is really important to think about is, for the most part, once like online video became real, and then you had some experimentation with the players. Oh, you can click here and choose your own adventure, and like a lot of these things, like startups were started around these things. Most of them failed, like because I think for the most part, this is an audience who's like, oh, that's kind of cool, but that's not like what I'm used to, right? I think now you're starting to have the mutants. You're starting to have like their expectation is interactivity. Like if it's not a game, or if it's not touchable, clickable, like kind of tap, always going, then it's not premium. And so I'm with you. Castro Theater packed at night, like that's an amazing, amazing experience. But like that's because we grew up cherishing that, right? And if you didn't, like that might be like you start fidgeting, or I don't know what would happen, and could be dangerous. But I think that's going to be a little bit more of the audience expectation in the future. And frankly, I'm concerned about it as a business owner, because we have a subscription service which is kind of traditional. It's kind of Netflixy. You click play, you watch a thing, and it's doing well. But I'm like, we need to start exploring that world much more.
So I'm just thinking about, you just said cherished experiences, and then how they affect where you are now. I'll just not presume that you cherished it, but since both Tiffany and George invoked their experience being at Cal, and Rolla, you have been such a great advisor for us at Cal as well, especially in digital humanities. I wonder if there's just a last thought any of you want to leave us about being at Berkeley, when you were then and where you are and what it means to be here now, and what you'd like to be telling us about Berkeley's responsibility in carrying forward the best of what we're talking about today.
Well, I was going to say, obviously they both went to Kelly. I've just been involved just the past few years. But I just want to say that, first of all, thank you so much for having us. And I think that I've spoken, for Berkeley events only recently this past year, and I will say that I am so proud of having these discourses and have these discussions. I don't see many other institutions really talking about things that are so much in the zeitgeist and so much in top of mind, and that are things that are extremely impactful socially. So I'm really, really proud of what you and all of Berkeley does. And to be honest, that the fact that audiences come and they listen and you're here for the whole time is something really special. And yeah, so thank you so much for having us.
I loved my experience at Cal. I hated high school. I was one of those people that hated high school. I could not wait to come to college, and then Cal was everything I wanted, which was diversity of thought, diversity of people. I was constantly in a collision of different perspectives. And in some ways, as you said that, it's like that's what the internet is to me now. It is that constant collision of fresh new ideas from different perspectives, and that was my whole Cal experience. So, I mean, I love what Cal represents. I mean, and especially today in this time, it's so important. So, and that's the best of the web.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and help me thank this crew for being with us and sharing such incredible.